Welcome to Where Work Meets Life. I'm Dr. Laura. I am a psychologist, business leader, author, speaker, and advocate. I'm passionate about bringing experts from around the world to you with a variety of topics at the intersection of where work meets life. I'm excited to be doing this podcast to educate, share knowledge, and raise awareness. Thank you for joining me, and I look forward to being here with you today. I am thrilled to be here today talking about second chances, an interview about surviving and thriving with Kerry Gladue. Today's topic is about survival and resiliency, and how telling a story can help inspire hope and healing in others. Even in the worst of circumstances, I believe as human beings, we all have the ability and the power within us to heal. I had the pleasure of being introduced to Mr. Kerry Gladue a few months ago, and I learned about his book, Second Chances, the Kerry Gladue Story. I couldn't wait to get my hands on this book, a very powerful memoir. And I did, and I read it, and I couldn't put it down. It was very, very impactful and a highly recommended read. Kerry was born in Edmonton, Alberta. He's a second-generation residential school survivor, as well as a survivor of childhood sexual abuse. The combination of those two things is so much to endure on any human being. And after those experiences, Kerry went on to have 30 years suffering and struggling with addiction, drug addiction, alcohol addiction. I can't imagine what that was like to have 30 years struggling and then to recover. And over the last 9 years, Kerry has been sober. And over the last 8 years, he's actually worked helping others treating alcoholism and addiction at the Simon House Recovery Center, the center that actually was the place that helped him recover and heal. Kerry uses his experiences to bring positive hope, change, and healing to other people who are suffering and struggling with addiction, childhood past trauma, sexual abuse in their histories, whatever it may be. Second Chances, the Kerry Gladue Story, takes the reader on a mind-bending journey through trauma and addiction, and then more positively through healing and hope. So without further ado, I am thrilled to be here with you today, Kerry.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
So it is a Friday. It's a Friday leading up to Christmas, and I'm just really happy to be bringing this episode out there to help other people and inspire hope and learn about your story. So let's start off, and I have a copy of the book here, by the way. And what I must say about this book is it's very personal. You speak to the reader and you have little conversations with the reader throughout it, checking in with how the reader is doing and feeling. And there's also some humor in it, which I really like, because I think even in the worst of horrible, situations and circumstances, if you can find some humor, it makes it even more human. And you've done a great job at that, Kerry.
Thank you. Yeah,
so,
it was
So can you share with us what led you to write and put yourself out there with this book?
Yeah, sure. As you mentioned, with that over 30 years in active addiction, comes a lot of times sitting in jail, a lot of times down and out on your luck, looking for something to grab onto, hope. And I remember my last time in jail was 9.5 years ago. And I noticed everybody was looking around for something in the jail. All the inmates, all the people who are sick and detoxing and suffering and sorry and wish they had another opportunity, a chance, a second chance. And I thought, I started looking for what they were. I was looking for stories. I was looking for something to lift my spirits up, that things are going to be okay. And I never found any, and there wasn't much in there for that, right? And if there was a book or two, it was outdated And it wasn't the here and now what goes on this day and time with addiction and the kinds of drugs and the different stuff that goes on today. And then I put that in the back burner. And then when I myself started healing on my journey, I remembered that about 3-4 years in. I said, I noticed that I'm sharing my story now with people, and I'm really personal about it. And I think one of the things that brought people closer to me was my openness about it, because I kept that secret, my sexual abuse secret, for all my life, right? And then people started coming up to me and opening up to me and saying, hey, I've never told anybody this before, ever. This happened to me. And then I thought the power of that, of starting the process. So I remembered that. And I said, well, hey, how can I get this out to help more people? And I have to be brutally honest. So I got started on that book, and I didn't really know where it would go. I just, trusted, and I went with it. It was hard. It was a hard ride.
Yeah, I bet you had to relive so many of those scenarios and circumstances when you were writing it, and rewriting parts of it, I'm guessing, really brought up a lot of those past memories for you, Kerry.
Yes, it did. And like you mentioned, the research part too. I'm going back to the old places where stuff happened to me. I'm revisiting my childhood home where a lot of physical abuse and addiction happened. I'm like that little boy again, sitting in front of those places, but I'm in a vehicle and I'm in tears, and I'm, it was hard. It was a huge investment for me to get this done, right? And I didn't want to be that guy anymore, that like I was in my addiction, that would start something and say I'm going to do this and do that, and I never ever followed through. I was going to start following through, just like staying sober. I'm going to follow through with this too, and trust, right?
Wow, and I know very well what goes into writing a book and then publishing a book. That must have been a lot of work and a huge dedication on your part.
It was, and it took me some time. I think it took a lot longer due to some situation that happened with my book. Being vulnerable like that and going through the trauma, and then trusting people with that story. I had a woman come into the picture, inspiring me and doing all this stuff I never experienced anymore, or in my life ever, I should say. And with hopes and dreams, movie productions, just laid it on me. And I'm like, really? You can do that? Oh yeah, this is me. This is what I do. I own this company. And I'm like, okay, sold me on it. And then later on, I'm finding out that I don't have my book anymore. All the proceeds of my books are going into her personal bank account. She's telling people she helped write my book and all kinds of stuff. So that prolonged it a lot, and it set me back a long time. It actually almost cost me my marriage as well, because of all the investment I had in that. And I was only focused on that book and trying to get it back from her. And I wasn't just focusing on my story. In my story, it talks about the residential school system and my mom's experience, me being a second generation survivor, right? My mom was raised in that, and I'm trying to hang on to my mom who's passed away, my sister, my brother, our stories, my family story. And then I got this woman telling us she owns the story, she's profited on it. And I'm like, what's happened? I sobered up, and I wanted to be like everybody else, good-hearted. And everyone's been telling me, you need to be like this. You need to be like us and have a good life. So I started trusting the one that come along, and she just turned me sideways, right? So I had to rebuild that. I lost some trust, and yeah, it was a difficult time for me. And you can tell I get a little bit worked up just talking about it, because it was hard. It was hard. I was crying again. I was like, how could I felt so ashamed that could happen to me. I thought I was smarter than that. It was just horrible, right? And I've learned since then. I've taken control of my book again. Like, I didn't even have my print for the printer, my master draft, nothing. She refused to give me anything. So there was some compassionate people that started coming forward, but I started sharing them, and I had to be careful too, right? But everything I'm saying is the truth, and I've got everything to back it up. So I have no worries there, and I'm willing to go out if anyone wants to hear about it. I have a LinkedIn page too that people can visit. It's some really neat and interesting stuff in there if you want to take the time to read it and find out a little bit more about what I'm discussing and see what your thoughts are, right?
So how do people find you on LinkedIn, Kerry?
Under my name, Kerry Gladue.
So I'm so sorry to hear all about this and how really you felt taken advantage of, that your story was almost stolen from you, which is, a bizarre and really unfortunate situation. And I think you raise a really good point that people that take advantage of others can come across very well, very professionally, very well connected, all of these things. And, rest assured, Kerry, that, all of us can be conned by these types of people in our lives. They come along and they are convincing. And, even me being a psychologist and thinking I can really spot human behavior, I've been taken advantage of in the past as well. And I think that we all need to be really aware of whoever we're dealing with. And I think authors, being an author myself, I get approached probably every week by people saying they can help turn my books into movies, or they can help me make more money on my books. Or if I pay $1,000 here, I can go on an episode of a radio show, and you're just constantly sucked into this money-making world. So, I certainly, if I were you, wouldn't feel, that you could have done anything differently. You were trusting and you were taken advantage of, but good for you to get your story back. Good for you. So with other authors that put themselves out there and publish memoirs, which are so deeply personal, and books in general, so people that put themselves out there, what are the warning signs that they may be taken advantage of? What have you learned that you wish you knew before and that you would pass on to other vulnerable people in the community?
If it's too good to be true, like the old saying goes, trust that. Look into it further. My first time writing a book and first time in everything, first time being sober, first time in this new world. I come from the streets, Laura. I come from prison. I come from foster homes. That's my upbringing. No trust in no one, right? So when I made the turn, healthy, got clean time in, I'm professional now myself, working in the field, and I'm teaching trust to my clients and forgiveness and all that stuff, that go healthy stuff. And then it happens to you, right? I want to touch on something too, when it's the re-victimization for a lot of us too, because in my situation, and I'll share, I grew up, my first stint in a foster home was when I was 7 years old, due to addiction with my mom and her boyfriend's physical abuse. We used to witness my mom beaten all the time and dragged up the stairs and with her hair, and us kids in our pajamas, she would huddle us and hide us underneath the basement stairs, and just to protect us, right? And she would get beaten up, and then I would have to say I was fighting in the park when I used to get beaten up, so she wouldn't get beaten up for protecting me. It was on and on. So it caught the attention of social services and stuff like that. So I was, in and out of foster homes as a little kid. I remember my first time waking up in a locked up center at about 7 years old, locked with all these little kids. And I still remember that institutional color of green. I still have a problem with today. That's never going to go away, right? And I peed my pants. I was so scared. I didn't know what was happening, right? For 2 days I stayed and I never told nobody, and nobody even said any different, no staff or nothing, right? Just do this, do that. Then again, I was let go home, right? I was released to home. So my mom was still with the same guy. Growing up in the residential school and doing the research on her made me understand all of this stuff a lot more, because mom never talked about it. 2.5 years old, she's taken from her home too. She's placed in residential school, in a nursery because she was just young, and then she stayed up there all her childhood. And when she got out, she was on the street. They taught them nothing. And when I had to look at her records, my mom had all these records. I had no idea. medical records. She was doing research for the residential school claim years ago, and she never talked about it. She still had all of that stuff in her, right? So my brothers, I'm telling about the book. My brothers started to hand me stuff. I got this, bro. I got this. Check this out. And I just broke into tears. The priest taking my mom every weekend in the car and raping her and then dropping her off with a bag of candy, and my mom in tears. Every weekend she went through this. A little girl, right? And then when I write in my book, if you notice, Laura, I touch on so many things in there, right? Justice, residential schools, I combine them all because it's all part of somebody's, like me, and my upbringing, right? And I touch on that part because for my mom, she didn't have a chance. She's let go from there when the last residential school closed in 1996 only in Canada. That's not long ago, right? And it's not. And my mom was on the streets after that. So there's my mom. She's having a baby. She had one son. She was impregnated by a new recruit RCMP officer who left her when he impregnated her, and she stuck with this baby. He went up for adoption. I've tried to make contact with this person. I wish I could, right? We've never heard of him all our life. We know his name. And then she had us. And then, then finding out that my mom had to work the streets to, prostitute herself to put food on the table for us. All they taught them was to clean and sew in there. That's it. They didn't teach them anything. Very low grade levels, just to get by, just to say they're doing something, I think, right? I had to, doing the research with the book had brought up so much stuff. And when her medical reports, when she left that residential school, she got shock treatment. She was placed in Panoka Mental Health Institute. And her notes I read is, this little girl she was 13 years old. She's fear of men and adults, and she appears all alone in this world. There's no parents or nothing, and I just broke down crying.
That's so heartbreaking. Oh,
yeah.
man,
And then I remember,
I'm so sorry.
Then I remember how she says, when she passed away in our living room in 2011, says, "I'm not dying in the hospital. I'm not going in institution. I'm staying here with my family." And December 27th, she made it 2 days after Christmas, right? So, but it was hard, right? And then to have this woman come there and say, "I own that story. I'm going to profit off of that story. I helped write it," and stuff. It's just, you have to be careful, right? And, I'm so passionate about that, when it comes to that stuff. And my story was never about making money. I donate a portion of each book sales to a treatment center called Alcove Recovery Center for Women and Children. And I donate one to Simon House. They're not for profit. They don't get money from anybody. They survive on donations just to get by, to help people. And I remember with the mom and the children, my mom could have used that. So I'm passionate about that. And then the treatment center where I grew up, I like to say, because I went in there 41 years old, and that's where I grew up. People say, you say, "Where'd you grow up?" "All the streets, Edmonton." Now I say I grew up at Simon House because it's true.
Wow, what a powerful place that is. It has such a spirit, right? And such a healing power. Thanks to counselors like you, addictions counselors, healing and recovery counselors. Amazing, amazing work, Kerry.
Thank you. We have a great team over there.
I bet you have a great team, and they're lucky to have you. And I would just go on to say about, again, when you have a book inside of you, or you've already written a draft, just be very, very careful, because there's an ecosystem of people, and there's what we call vanity publishers. They want to charge a lot of money. Here's your book, and then they don't do anything for you, and it costs you a lot. And there's different ways to publish traditionally, self-publish, etc. But there's all kinds of people that'll claim they can help you for the right price, including editors. That maybe aren't experienced editors. So we just have to be very careful. My advice is always talk to the writing community. When Words Collide is the big writing conference every August in Calgary. I have lots of connections in the writing community. Reach out, and the writing community is strong and vibrant, everywhere, not just here, but everywhere. There's writing communities that can help you sort out the truth from the cons.
Yeah. Definitely worth looking into.
right? And I think that if we want to buy your book, Kerry, how do we buy it from you? Is it on Amazon? Where do I find it?
Right now, you can go. I got a Facebook page that's doing very well. It's called Second Chances Kerry Gladue, and there's a shop button on there where it'll pull you through nice and smoothly through the questions, and your book gets shipped out usually the same day. They get set up, and then there's signed copies too. I like to sign them and put a little inspirational thing in there for people too.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I have a signed copy here that you signed for me. And I love how there's pictures in it throughout. I mean, starting with a picture of your mom there. Oh, I'm not holding it up right. Yeah. Anyway, I'm just moving it around the camera, but there's pictures at every step of the way of your mother, of you as a young kid, you as a troubled teenager. I mean, one of my favorite stories was the mall break-in. Just the way you told it was humorous, the jewelry store, but it was nothing short of amazing. Like that you survived all of this and survived all those times in jail, and then came out as such an inspiring human being, right? That's just amazing.
I wanted to make that story that's why you notice the little writing things in there. Like I wanted to make it as I'm with the reader. Thank you for being there with me. I'm here with you. I know you're going through some stuff. Maybe it might bring some stuff up to you. I get it. And let's talk through it here. There's a little spot we're going to talk, take a breather, think about things a bit. And, but I really wanted that connection in the book. I wanted something different. And actually, I'm getting a lot of feedback on that alone. Is just that thank you for that. I really felt that you were there with me when I was reading your story. And that's exactly what I wanted, right?
Yeah, and addiction is such a long and winding road, and so many people just can't get through it, including one of my childhood best friends who took her life. I think it was 4 years ago now. She took her life January 27th, 2017, and she had suffered from years and years of addictions, and she was such a bright, shining star and such a bright light, and I know from the experience of being her friend and seeing her suffer and struggle and trying to get well. And then she was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, and that was it. She just felt like, I can't, like on top of the addictions and all the healing work and the groups and the AA and everything, she's like, okay, now I'm going to be disabled and this and that. And you know what? I'm just going to do it on my own terms and finish this off. And she asked me to do a eulogy for her funeral in her goodbye note, and I did. And she said, I don't want the eulogy to be about MS. I want it to be about addictions and mental health.
Aww.
And her parents, who, just didn't want any of this getting out. They didn't want that. They didn't want that exposed for the family, but we sure did. We sure exposed, the topic, and her AA sisters spoke as well. And I think we just need to be open about the fact that there's a lot of people suffering from addiction, and they may not just be people who don't have money or on the streets or whatever. It can be all types of society, including a surgeon or whoever, right? Right?
Yeah, I see it all the time. It doesn't matter where you come from. I tell some clients, and I said, because I'm the intake coordinator too, right? I bring guys into treatment. I tell them, it doesn't matter if you come from under the bridge over there or Beverly Hills. It's going to take you out. And if it hasn't yet, it's gonna, right? You may be functioning, you may be able to do all this stuff, but it's going to come to an end. It's just gonna come to an end really hard if you've been doing it this long, right? The reality of it.
Yeah, it absolutely would. So what characteristics about you, Kerry, do you think helped you not only survive the unbelievable traumas, but also to thrive? Because you seem to be thriving in life. Like, I'm really proud of all you've done. So what characteristics do you think led you to where you are today?
I think I've always been a fighter, and no matter how bad it got, I always hung on to like 10% of me, so I can have something to grab back onto when I'm ready. Just a little bit. So I got like an anchor or a rope. There's a little rope hanging there. 10% of me, what I got left, I didn't ruin to get back on. And I've always kind of done that, right? This last time where I was looking at 11-year prison sentence, I'm a recovering crystal meth addict, and I was told, by a lot of people, there's a very low survival rate of coming out of that alive. And I'm like, oh, really? So that was a challenge for me as well, right? I wanted to see if I can I can survive it. Not only survive it, maybe get some other people out of it too, right? Do my best to instigate or promote healing, because there's so many people that come by. I go to jails and prisons now, and I go inside on the units, pre-COVID, of course, and I go in there, and I've walked into some of these things. There's 30, 40 inmates, and I'm walking in there with my normal clothes now. I can come and go, and some of them are looking at me, and you look familiar. And I'll say, hey, and I'll tell their name, eh? They'll say, Kerry, you're kidding, right? And then I'll tell them what happened to me and what it came around and what it's like on this side. It's not that bad. And here's the way to do it. This is what I did. And you open up to that, it does work. If you give it all, I don't believe in hanging on to a part of my old life, because I believe that's just a little nest I'm keeping warm until if I ever want to go back. I have to get rid of everything. I have to do a lot of cleanup stuff, and it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight, but it does happen, right?
So it seems like you've persisted, you've taken supports, you have an amazing spirit and a belief system, and an amazing community. And one thing that inspired me in your book was the judge. So the judge that, spearheaded a program to help you deal with your addiction, and actually recover so that you wouldn't continue being in and out of jail. So tell us a little bit about that.
This Judge Ogle, he's with Calgary Drug Treatment. I think he's retired now, or he's semi-retired. It was a whole different experience. So here's me going in the court rooms all my life, and there's a judge there that actually took the time to listen to me, talk to me. He's like a father figure to all of us in the courtroom, all us drug court participants. And you can tell he was invested, and he had his heart in it. He could be doing anything else, but he decided to do this. He's seen a different way out. He used all his experience, not just to pass paper, but hey, this is what I'm going to use my experience for, and I'm going to help these people make a difference. And my story is just one of many, right? There's so many people that's recovered through this program. That's drug court, and I see there's a lot more light on that now, and there's a lot of more programs starting up. We should have did this years ago, and I know a lot of people tried to get it going, but now they're seeing that it's for this kind of lifestyle, crimes, involving drugs or to feed your drug habit. It's a way out. I ended up working for them for 2.5 years after. So it was a really good experience, right?
Wow, that's amazing. And I think people like Judge Ogle are just beautiful human beings, right? So when we think of, predators and people that take advantage and cons and whatever you want to call them, I would say there's, equally as many, hopefully more, depends on your perspective, but I believe more people that have pure hearts and have great intentions. And would you agree with that, Kerry? Like, are you feeling like more optimistic or more skeptical given what happened to you?
No, as far as that program in that, I'm really optimistic. Like, it wasn't just the judge in there too. It's a team, and there's a Crown prosecutor, a federal prosecutor. You got a lawyer, you got the judge, you got a Calgary police member. All these are a team in the drug court team. A social worker, like my story about the social. I didn't really get into that, and I'll mention that a little bit later. So they're all together, and so I'm building trust again. When I graduated from the program, a judge came down from the bench, walked up, put a thing around my neck and said, this is the key back to the community for trust. Your trust back, a fresh start. And he gave me a hug. What judge does that? They didn't give me a hug before they slammed the door and threw you in jail. It's a whole different, right? And I made friends with these people after, right? I trusted them, and it's a whole different thing, right? So things are better. My whole perception growing up was all wrong. If I was healthy enough to and in the right place, but all the stuff that I mentioned in my addiction, I was only trying to survive. And most of us are, just to survive. You're not thinking about all these things later when you're just trying to feel better and survive and find shelter and get food in you and take something to get rid of the pain and the hurt. And that's all you think about.
And I think we're all on a quest to, self-actualize and find meaning and purpose and all these things. But when you're going through an addiction, I just don't think your brain can get to that point until you rid yourself of the addiction, right?
Right.
So my next question is, we're all going through this COVID-19, crazy pandemic year. And I always like to, ask my podcast guests the question: how has the pandemic been an opportunity to evolve our lives, would you say, from your perspective?
I would think it has brought a new meaning to family, to the things that really matter in our life, because I think we've all lost over the years, what the important things were. Right now we're in shutdown. People know we want to be with our families and all that. Before it was just like, if I make it on, I won't be making it today. Happens all the time, right? I just can't get to this one. And maybe next year I'll see you then, right? But it's brought a whole new meaning and closeness to families and the want and willingness to get together. That who never knows, it could be your last time. And we're seeing so many tragedies right now too, with people passing away from this, and my heart just breaks for that. Just knowing that, if it could take a little while longer with the vaccine, who knows what would happen, right? This can be saved.
And I think it's easy to think, well, it's just people in their 80s and 90s. But those people are still like mothers and fathers and grandmothers. And it's just to be like dying alone in a hospital bed. It's just really, really sad.
Yeah, and they say the greatest gift is to take care of your parents in the end, and people with this ain't allowed to do that. They can't even be around them, and after that, all the love that that elderly person has given their family members all their life. Say if my mom was alive, all she went through so I can survive, and that in the end I couldn't be there for you, that would be hard. And
Wouldn't that be heartbreaking? Yeah, so my heart goes out to those people, especially the ones that are alone. But you raise a good point in that the silver lining, I agree, has been bringing a lot of families closer together and making us realize what's important in our lives.
Yes.
Because our lives have been simplified, right? Because we can't do a lot of the things that we used to do. I myself used to travel a fair bit for work and haven't been, obviously. But do I really miss it? Do I miss as much travel? No, I kind of like the routine of, hanging out with my kids more and not being exhausted at airports.
Yeah, for sure.
So, I talk a lot about work-life wellness. So there's this concept of work-life balance, but I like to use the word work-life wellness. It's being well in your life itself, your personal life, your work, all the spheres of your life, you're well. What has been your greatest challenge with that? I'd say in the last while, or the last number of years, maybe post-addiction, Kerry, that your greatest challenge with work-life wellness and how you've overcome that challenge?
Well, that's a good question. When I'm into something now, I'm all in. And then some, right? I push myself, and I tend to lose, what the really important things, family, spending time, putting work aside. And I work in a profession where people are dying, right? People are dying all the time. And as the intake coordinator, I have to make decisions right away. Okay, I need to get this guy. There's so much things to do. It's time sensitive, and it just can't be put off during 9 to 5, right? So I'm on call all the time. But, I look after that, and my wife, Shannon, is pretty good about that, right? And she works in the same kind of profession as well, so she understands. We like to go for, drives, stuff like that. As I mentioned earlier, my 3-year-old daughter, Gracie, likes French Fry Friday.
That is so cute.
I'll be hearing about that after daycare, French Fry Friday. You know, and with the COVID and stuff too, I think it's brought out more that we need to do more of that. I need to be able to find more time. I'm guilty too. I'm just a workaholic too, right?
And that takes a lot to admit, right? But I think admitting it is the first step, because I do think work can become a sort of addiction or obsession and a lot of people are struggling with that in our world today.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree.
So, yeah, so I mean, given that you know a lot about addictions, you know, with alcohol and drugs, what would you say would be your advice around work addictions? Like, how are they same or different?
I don't think they are. I don't think there's much different at all. No, addiction is an addiction. Doesn't matter if it's a substance or an activity or, you know, or a cell phone or anything like that, right? It's still an addiction. You know, I lost my cell phone one time and I had to laugh after because I was traumatized. I was like, what? That's my lifeline. Everything's on there, right? And sometimes I have to be I get this little once in a while. Put the cell phone down. It's kind of like it's dinner time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's realizing our patterns and then figuring out ways to break those patterns, right?
Yes. Yes.
And boundaries between work and non-work life, which when you're on call and stuff, it's a little trickier, but perhaps you can make up that time in other ways with some flexibility. Do you have flexibility in what you do?
Yeah, I do. I do. Yeah. My work's pretty good with that. You know, like right now I'm working from home, which is good. I can do that if I'm able to. Uh, we get extra time, mental health time off and stuff like that to take care of things and take care of us. So I really like that. It's good work in that kind of field too. They understand that, you know, my work, so that we need that because you really get burnt out. You got like 44 guys that are new in treatment and they're going through their initial life struggles with adapting, right? Adapting to anything, you know, structure, routine. You know, it all starts. It's not just stopping drinking and drugs. It's the structure that's got to come with that, right? Because you got this same person that just doesn't drink and do drugs for a little while. That's all. Until it starts up again.
Yeah, I bet that's a huge learning curve and a huge adjustment. Wow. I can't imagine, but I have a lot of respect for what you do. So let's ask you about this is an interesting question I ask all my guests. If you didn't have to sleep, so if you could buy back that extra, let's just say 8 hours out of every day, what else would you do with that 8 hours, Kerry?
I would make up for some lost time, 30 years of active addiction, and focus on more things that I'm learning now, like family, uh, goals, helping people, you know, getting things done. You know, I just turned 50 here in August, and I still feel younger than we normally do. I'm here. I talk to other guys my age, and we joke around, and I feel like 20. I'm 30. You know, but you don't get that time back, right? You don't. But I would try to do my best, add more education, following my dreams would be one.
Nice.
Yeah, I like that because I never did that before. I got a vision here. I'm going to share it.
Okay.
This going to film one day too.
Oh, wow. So what do you envision? Do you envision a documentary about your life or a feature film or what?
I think a feature film. I got a pretty large following now, and people are reading my book. And this needs to be, you know, one the other day, and I wish I would have saved it. It said, you need to make this into a movie so it can help people. And I'm going to treasure this book, and I've already been showing it to people, and you know, I'm getting people are ordering from people that read it and left and right. Like it's doing really well, and you know, people are messaging me and talking to me about personal stuff, and you know, it's good. It's good for me and it's good for them because I understand. And they took the time to read my book, and I want to take the time to see if I can talk to them about stuff that's on their mind that they otherwise wouldn't want to talk to anybody about, and that I'm safe to do it.
Yeah. Amazing. What an inspiration you are, and just opening yourself up to people reaching out. And I mean, you truly have a pure heart in all of this. You're not out to make a quick buck. And books aren't really the way to do that, by the way. I mean,
I
I've
know.
learned myself. But
Yeah.
you're out to inspire, influence, and film can be a way of doing that. And I very much hope that that'll come true for you. Because you do have an amazing story, and lots of twists and turns in the story, and some drama, and like all these like anecdotes that you told about growing up. I just think it would make a beautiful film. So I hope that lots of people get their hands on your book who watch this podcast as well. Do you have another book in you, Kerry?
I'm thinking about a few things. I'm thinking about a few things when things settle down right now with the book, because it's still, like I said, I just got it going again the past 3-4 months, and it's picking up. And so it's putting me into different areas. So I want to stay with that and not overwhelm myself, because I used to do that all the time.
Yeah.
Right? Just focus on that. And my wife's been helping me now. She's doing really good. She's got some great ideas too. So we're going to work together on this. And then, I got some good stuff. I'll be letting you know for sure.
What about keynote speeches? So doing speeches about your story, is that happening or will be happening?
Yeah, I'm available for that. I've started doing that. I've got a few scheduled coming up here for Satina Police in January 25th. I'm doing keynote for them. When they come up, I don't like to say no, because you never know, right? If it's going to touch the right person, right? You never know. And the program I'm in too, we talk about that. When you share, you just never know what you're going to share that's going to help that person in the back room that's struggling, right? So
you just never know. You're absolutely right. And I think the Indigenous community, I feel just horrible about what happened with residential schools, and being born in Calgary in 1975 and knowing, here I am in school in Calgary and I had a loving home and whatnot, and just knowing what was going on in these residential schools, it really bothers me. It's just really, really sick. And I'm just really sorry that happened to your mom, and that then you ended up having struggles because of it. But now you've broken the cycle. So, tell me about your daughter, and how you are as a father, knowing what you don't want to put her through.
Well, I'm able to catch myself on things right away. She's not around two parents that do alcohol or drugs, that chaos. She's not left here or left there at different people's homes, or with babysitters. We're very protective about her. She attends daycare, school, her work, she calls it, my work. She attends that every day, and we have a good routine with her. We do all the stuff that opposite of what happened with me growing up, right? And she's very happy. Like the other day, she says, "I want a hug." She's 3. She's turned 3. "I want a hug," and she grabbed me and her mom, both of us. And she just squeezed us, and it was just the warmest thing. And that's love. That's family. That's what I want. That's her generation coming up. Her cycle will be different, right?
Absolutely. And that's that breaking of that cycle, that intergenerational trauma. And I think a lot of people struggle from it, whether it's the residential school situation of the Indigenous peoples, or whether it's trauma that you've had in your own family of sexual abuse or physical abuse or whatever it may be. And I think a lot of families have gone through things, and some of them are just really good at hiding it and covering it up. Would you agree?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, I agree totally.
So, which leads me to my final question here. If you could have one wish for a better world when it comes to our work and lives as human beings, what would it be?
I would say continue to work hard on accepting each other's differences. Have more compassion. Stand up for what is right. Stand up for the person that seems alone there, that's fighting a true fight. Stand with them so they're not alone. And I think, and that's just part of the reconciliation, part of life, part of loving, part of being a human being, is all stick together, and support each other. I heard this saying. I always like to say when I'm doing these is, it's not my saying, but gossip dies when it hits a wise person's ears, right?
Nice.
You know what I mean? Gossip dies. So it's just like telephone tag when I used to facilitate group, and we'd have to get clients to stop telling war stories because they talk about their addiction life on the street and it gets them all worked up. So we kibosh them. Nobody likes that. No treatment centers do that. It's not healthy. So then I would play telephone tag. I'd write down, there's 30 clients around the desk, and I'd write down something. I'd tell the first guy, and I'd say, pass it down the line. And when it comes back, it's a whole different story. But yet those stories take people out. The stories kill people. Those stories cause people to hurt, to relapse. Let's build each other up now. Let's do something different for everybody, not just the reconciliation, for all of us. Let's work on being a better human being, because we all went through something, and we're going through something together right now. And we've all learned. We had a reality check. So let's use that, and let's not forget.
Exactly. That was so well put. I think the world of you. And do you have any final things you want to say to the listeners about your book?
Yep.
Reaching out to you?
Yeah, I can be reached at for my email, kerrygladue@gmail.com. My Facebook, like I said, Second Chances Kerry Gladue. Reach out if you need chat or anything like that. You have any questions, I'm available. I'll make time for you. And stay safe. And Lord, thank you for your show. Thank you for all you do. And thanks for the friendship. And you just never know.
You just never know who you'll meet in life. But I'm certainly glad that we are now connected. And I'll do everything in my power to spread the word about your amazing book. And I think you're a very inspiring human being. So thank you for doing what you do, Kerry Gladue.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us today. If you found this content useful, please share with others who may benefit and engage with us on social media. In the podcast summary, you'll find links to my psychology practices, Work Evolution, Canada Career Counseling, and Synthesis Psychology for more detailed information, articles, and tips. I hope you have a wonderful, healthy day, and thank you for joining us.